There is a particular kind of woman the frontier makes invisible. Not because she is small, not because she is quiet, but because the land itself seems to look through her, past her braided hair, past the dust caked into the creases of her knuckles, past the worn-down soles of her moccasins that had walked so far the leather had begun to separate at the toe like a mouth trying to say something no one wanted to hear. I have kept a log since I was 19 years old. My father gave me the habit. Write what you see, he said, before your mind decides what it means, so I write. I have filled 31 journals in my life, trail records, weather notes, livestock counts, the occasional sketch of a hawk or a stone formation that caught my eye. I am not a poet. I do not pretend to be. But there are some things I have seen that refuse to stay inside a ledger column, that spill out beyond the ruled lines and demand a different kind of accounting. What happened in the autumn of 1887, in the stretch of high desert between the Mescal Mountains and the edge of my east pasture fence, is one of those things. I am going to tell you about a woman named Seiya. I am going to tell you about my donkey, Porter. And I am going to tell you what it costs a person to walk until they have nothing left, and what it means when someone, for no good reason, decides to stop and ask if they are all right. Don't look away from this one. The frontier will try to make her invisible again. It has been trying for a long time. I almost missed her entirely. That is the truth of it, and I have sat with that truth long enough now that it no longer embarrasses me to say it plainly. I almost rode past her the way a man rides past a rock or a dry riverbed, noting the shape of it, cataloging it somewhere in the background of his mind, and then moving on toward whatever task is pulling him forward by the collar. It was Porter who stopped first. Porter is a gray donkey, 14 hands high, with a white muzzle and ears so large they seem to belong to a different, much larger animal. He is not beautiful. He is not fast. He is stubborn in the way that only donkeys can be, not aggressive, not mean, just possessed of an absolute bone-deep certainty that he knows better than you do and the patience to prove it. I have had him 11 years. He has been wrong precisely twice in that time, and one of those occasions involved a rattlesnake he was certain he could negotiate with. He could not, but he lived, and he has not changed his fundamental philosophy as a result of that experience. On the morning of October the 4th, 1887, Porter stopped walking. We were moving along the eastern fence line of my property, 3 miles of cedar post and rusted wire that I had been meaning to patch for 2 weeks and had not gotten around to. I had my tools in the saddlebag, a canteen, a biscuit I had wrapped in cloth that morning, and my log. Always my log. Porter had been moving at his usual unhurried pace, ears rotating like small radar dishes, nose reading the air the way I read the land, constantly, automatically looking for information. He stopped. I said, "Porter." He did not move. I said it again with slightly more authority and nudged him with my heel. He turned his head to the left, toward the dry creek bed that runs along the southern edge of the fence line, about 30 yards into the scrub oak and brittle bush. I squinted. There was a shape there, low, against the base of a large mesquite tree. I had ridden this fence line hundreds of times, and I knew every rock and deadfall by memory, and this shape was not one of them. I dismounted. This is the moment I return to sometimes, when I am being honest with myself in the small hours of the night. I did not dismount because I was a good man. I did not dismount because I had a generous spirit, or because I had been raised with particular compassion for strangers. I dismounted because Porter had stopped, and Porter does not stop without a reason, and after 11 years I have learned to trust his reasons even when I cannot yet see them myself. She was sitting with her back against the mesquite trunk, both knees drawn up to her chest, her arms wrapped around them. She was Apache. I could see that from the style of her clothing, what remained of it, a worn cotton skirt and a blouse that had once been blue and was now closer to gray, and the remnants of high moccasin boots that had walked themselves nearly to pieces. Her hair was loose, which I knew was unusual. It had leaves and small twigs caught in it. Her head was down, chin resting on her knees, and she was absolutely still in the way that animals go still when they are either resting or pretending to be invisible. I stopped about 10 feet away. "Ma'am," I said. She did not move. "I'm not going to bother you," I said. "Just want to make sure you're all right." Very slowly, she raised her head. Her eyes were dark and exhausted in a way I have only seen in people who have been running from something for a very long time. Not the exhaustion of a single hard day, but the accumulated weight of days and days of it, stacked up so high the whole structure was starting to lean. There was a cut above her left eyebrow, dried and dark, several days old at least. Her lips were cracked. She looked at me with an expression that was not fear exactly, but something close to it, a very careful, very practiced assessment. She was calculating something. I did not know what. I took off my hat. I don't know why I did that, I just did. She looked at the hat in my hand, then back at my face. Water, she said. The word was flat and deliberate, like a stone placed carefully on a table. I pulled the canteen off Porter's saddlebag without a word and held it out. She looked at it for a moment, that calculating look again, and then unwound herself from the mesquite tree and came forward on hands and knees, which was when I understood she was not going to be able to stand without difficulty. She took the canteen and drank, not frantically, carefully. 3 measured swallows, and then she stopped and held the canteen against her chest as though she needed to feel its weight. More, I said, it's yours. She looked at me. Drink the rest of it, I said. I'm 3 miles from the house, I'll manage. She drank the rest of it. Porter ambled forward without any instruction from me and pressed his enormous nose against her shoulder. She flinched, then went still. He snuffled at her hair. She turned her head and looked at him with an expression I can only describe as bewildered, the way a person looks when they have been braced for something terrible, and something ordinary happens instead. That's Porter, I said. He's nosy, he won't hurt you. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she reached up very slowly and touched his nose with 2 fingers. He leaned into it. I had my log in my coat pocket. I did not write anything down. I just stood there. Her name, I would learn later, was Seiya. She did not tell me that day. That day she told me almost nothing, and I did not ask. What I could read was in her body, the way she held her ribs when she moved, which told me at least one of them was cracked or bruised. The state of her feet when I finally helped her stand, the moccasins so worn that the soles had come entirely away from the uppers on the right boot, and the skin beneath was raw. She had been walking. For how long and from where, and toward what, none of that was mine to know yet. What I knew was that she could not walk any further. What I knew was that I was 3 miles from a house with a spare room and a wood stove and a pot of beans I had left soaking overnight. What I knew was that Porter was standing close beside her with an air of quiet satisfaction, as though this had been the plan all along. I am a man who keeps records. I write down what I see before my mind decides what it means. What I saw was a woman who had walked herself to the edge of something and stopped, and what I saw was Porter stopping first, and what I saw was myself standing there in the dry October light with an empty canteen, hat in hand, already knowing what I was going to do before I had consciously decided anything at all. "Can you ride?" I asked. She looked at Porter. "He's steady," I said, "slow but steady." She looked at me. "I'll walk beside," I said. "You won't fall." She studied me for a long time, long enough that I began to feel the weight of it, the particular discomfort of being examined by someone who has learned, through very hard experience, to read whether a person means what they say. I am not sure what she found. I am not sure what I had to offer, exactly, a middle-aged rancher with ink-stained fingers and a donkey who thought he knew best and a property that had been slowly coming apart at the seams for 3 years since my wife passed. I was not a heroic figure. I was just what was there. She put her hand on Porter's back. He stood absolutely still, which is something he does not always do. It took 3 tries for her to get up, and I held Porter's lead and did not look away, which I think was the right thing, not to pretend I hadn't noticed, but to simply hold the rope and wait and let the struggling be hers to do. When she was settled, she put both hands in Porter's mane and held on. She did not thank me. I did not expect her to. We started toward the house. I walked, Porter walked. She rode barely, her body doing the careful work of staying balanced without putting weight on her ribs. About half a mile in, she said, without looking at me, "Why?" I thought about it. Porter stopped, I said. She was quiet for a moment. "That's it. That's most of it," I said. She didn't say anything else for the rest of the walk, but I noticed, somewhere around the 2nd mile, that the set of her shoulders had changed. Not relaxed exactly, just shifted, as though she had been carrying something in one hand and had moved it to the other for a while. I kept my log that night, wrote down the fence line, the mesquite tree, the way the light was falling. wrote Porter's ears, wrote the shape of her hands on the canteen, did not yet write her name because I didn't have it yet. Wrote woman Apache, alive, the rest is not mine to know yet. And then I closed the journal and went to make sure the beans hadn't burned. She slept for 2 days. Not continuously. She woke, ate, slept again. I gave her the room off the back of the house that my wife had used for sewing and which still smelled, very faintly, of cedar and wool. I did not tell her this. I made a pallet on the floor because the cot in there was narrow and I wasn't sure if she'd want to be in a bed that had belonged to someone else, and she took the pallet without comment and slept on it with the door closed. I kept the wood stove going. The first morning I left a plate outside the door. Beans, cornbread, a cup of coffee I wasn't sure she'd want. When I came back an hour later, the plate was empty, and the cup was gone, and the door was still closed. I kept my own routine. I have a log of those 2 days that reads like nothing happened: fence repairs, a check on the 3 remaining longhorn steers, a note about a harrier hawk I'd seen hunting the north pasture. But in between those entries there are small things. The sound of footsteps at 3 in the morning, the creak of the back door. When I looked out, I saw her standing in the yard in the dark, face turned up to the sky, perfectly still. I did not go out. It was not my place. On the 3rd morning, she came into the kitchen while I was drinking coffee and sat down at the table. She was moving better. Someone had wrapped her own ribs, I didn't know when, or with what, and her feet were bandaged with strips of cloth she had torn from somewhere. She had found water and washed her hair, and it was pulled back now in the way she would keep it, mostly. She said, "My name is Seiya." I said, "Ben Collard." She nodded. I poured her a cup of coffee. She held it in both hands. "I need to work," she said. "For the room, I don't take charity." I looked at my coffee. The fence on the east line needs patching. The chickens need feeding. I've got 3 steers that have been unsupervised for 2 days because I was occupied. "I can do fence," she said. "All right." "And I'm not staying long," she said. It was not hostile. It was simply a fact being stated, the way you'd state the temperature or the distance to town. I am telling you this so there is no confusion. "All right," I said again. She drank the coffee. I turned back to the stove. That was the beginning. What I did not know then, what took weeks of careful observation and the occasional fragment of conversation to understand, was where she had come from. Not the geography of it, though that too was complex, but the human geography, the landscape of what had happened to her. She had been, before the walking, a woman with a place, a woman with people, a camp deep in the Mescal foothills that had survived long past the point that most camps had been relocated, absorbed, or broken up entirely. It was not a large group, a few families, some elders, children. They had been careful. They had been, as she put it in one of the few direct statements she ever made about it, very good at being small. And then they had not been small enough. The details she gave me were sparse, and she gave them in the way she gave most things, precisely, without elaboration, as though she were filing a report and emotional commentary was a luxury she could not currently afford. What I understood was that the camp was gone, that she had not been there when it happened, that she had come back to find it empty in the particular way that things are empty when people were there very recently and are now not. That she had then walked. For how long she did not say, I did not ask. I looked at her feet and made my own estimate, and then folded that estimate away somewhere quiet and private, and did not take it out again. What I wrote in my log that night was this: she walked. The rest is not the important part. By the end of the first week, she had repaired 40 yards of fence line that I had been neglecting for 2 seasons. She did it methodically, without asking questions, carrying the wire stretcher and the post driver with the easy efficiency of someone who had worked hard with her hands all her life. She was not trying to impress me. She was simply working because she said she would, and because I came to understand work was one of the things that still made sense to her when not much else did. I wrote things down. I have always written things down. I wrote the fence posts she drove. I wrote Porter following her up and down the fence line like a dog, his large gray face appearing at intervals over the wire. I wrote the morning she fixed the broken hinge on the chicken coop door without being asked, simply because she saw it was broken, and so she fixed it. I did not write what I was beginning to feel, which was something I did not have accurate words for yet. On the 8th day, she said to me over supper, "You write everything down." "I do," I said. Why, my father's habit, I said. He said to write what you see before your mind decides what it means. She was quiet for a moment, turning her fork in her hand. What do you see? She asked. Not what have you written, what do you see? I looked at her. I see someone who is very tired, I said, and very good at not showing it. She looked at her plate. I see someone who fixed a chicken coop hinge this morning that I have been ignoring for 4 months, I said. The corner of her mouth moved. It was not quite a smile. It was the ghost of one, the place where a smile used to live and might someday come back to. I see Porter follow you around like you're the most interesting thing that's happened to him in years, I said, and Porter is difficult to impress. She looked out the window at the dark yard. He's a good donkey, she said. He is, I said. He has better judgment than most people I know. She said nothing for a while. Then, what did you write when you found me? I thought about it. Woman Apache alive. The rest is not mine to know yet. She held that for a moment, let it settle somewhere. That's all. That was what I knew, I said. She got up and took her plate to the basin, washed it, set it on the shelf. Get some sleep, Mr. Collard, she said, and went to her room. I sat at the table for a while. Then I opened my log. The trouble came in the 3rd week. I had half expected it, in the way you expect weather. You read the signs, you note the pressure in the air, and you go about your work knowing that something is building on the horizon. In the autumn of 1887, in the territory of Arizona, an Apache woman living on a white rancher's property was not an unremarkable thing. It was, in fact, the kind of thing that people had opinions about. Loud ones. The man who came was named Dawes, Roy Dawes. He ran cattle on the property directly north of mine and had, for the 6 years we had been neighbors, maintained a relationship with me that I would describe as professionally civil and personally cold. We agreed on very little. We had never had cause for direct conflict. He was the sort of man who measures the value of a thing by how much it costs someone else, and who mistakes cruelty for efficiency. He rode up on a Thursday afternoon, while Seiya was in the yard splitting wood. I was at the barn when I heard the hooves. I came around the side of the house and saw Dawes sitting his horse at the gate, looking at Seiya with an expression I have seen before on men like him. Not exactly hostile, not exactly anything you could point to directly, but with a quality of assessment that had nothing to do with respect. Seiya did not stop splitting wood. She set the next log, raised the axe, and split it cleanly. Set another, split it. She had not looked up. Collard, Dawes said when he saw me. Dawes, I said. Got yourself some help, he said. I do, I said. He looked at me, then back at her. You know what she is. She's the woman who repaired my east fence line, I said, and who splits wood better than I do. He didn't find that amusing. Words going around, Ben. Word usually does, I said. People are going to have questions. People can come ask me directly, I said. Seiya set another log. The axe came down, clean split. Dawes shifted in his saddle. He had the look of a man trying to decide how far he wanted to push something, calculating the distance between what he wanted to say and what he could get away with. You know, the sheriff's been moving people off. Camps being cleared out all through the mescals. You don't know where she came from, what she's running from. I know she works hard and she doesn't steal and she's done nothing that warrants this conversation, I said. That's what I know. He looked at me for a long moment. Careful, Ben, he said. It was the kind of careful that is not advice but threat. I appreciate you stopping by, Roy, I said. He looked at Seiya one more time. She had not once looked up. She set the next log. The axe came down. She was not pretending not to hear. She was simply refusing to perform the smallness he was expecting. He rode away. I walked to the woodpile. Seiya set another log. She did not look at me. That's not the last of that, she said. No, I said. You know what you're inviting. I picked up a split log and added it to the stack. He's got opinions, he's not the law. She set the axe head down and rested her hands on the handle and looked at me. You understand what the law is doing out there. I did understand. I had been watching it, writing it in my log without fully knowing what to make of it. The forced relocations, the camps broken up, the steady narrowing of space for people who had been in this land since before any of our words for it. I understood it, and I had not known what to do with my understanding, and I still did not know, and knowing that about myself was not comfortable. I understand it's wrong, I said. I don't know what I can do about most of it. I know what I can do here. She studied me. You're not a brave man, she said. It was not an insult. She said it the way a doctor states a diagnosis, observational, precise. You're just stubborn. Porter comes by it honestly then, I said. She looked away, that almost smile again. Go back to the barn, she said. I'll finish this. I went back to the barn. She told me about her husband on a night when the wind was driving cold out of the northwest, and the wood stove was burning hard, and we were both sitting up past when we should have been. Not for any particular reason, but because neither of us could sleep, and the kitchen was warm. She said his name once. I did not write it down, which was right. Some things are not for ledgers. He had been one of the men in the camp, younger than her by 2 years. She said this last part with a small, rueful quality that told me it had been a source of gentle teasing between them. He had been, she said, very bad at staying still. Always moving, always at the edge of the camp looking outward, planning routes, noting terrain. He was the kind of man who knew where all the exits were, she said, before he sat down anywhere. He had been gone before the camp was cleared. Not dead, or not that she knew. Gone in the way that a person who is always noting exits sometimes goes into one of them when the choice is that or something worse. She did not say whether she was still looking for him. She did not say whether she still expected to find him. She told me the facts of it, the way he moved, the way he knew the land, the way he used to leave small marked stones along trails so she could track his routes if she needed to, and then she was quiet. I did not say I was sorry. I have had people say that to me when they did not know what else to say, and I know how it lands, accurate but insufficient. A hand reaching toward a wound and stopping just short of touching it. I said, he sounds like someone who knew how to leave breadcrumbs. She looked at me. Someone who made sure you could follow, I said. She was quiet for a very long time. Yes, she said, he did. The fire shifted in the stove. Porter made a sound from the barn, that low, carrying sound he makes when he wants you to know he is aware of the world and does not approve of everything in it. He's dramatic, Seiya said. He has feelings, I said. She was quiet for a moment, then so quietly I almost missed it. What did you write tonight? I opened the log on the table. Read wind from northwest. Stove burning hard. She told me about him. I did not ask. She gave it freely, which means she needed to give it somewhere. She looked at that for a moment. The rest is not yours to know yet, she said. The rest is not mine to know yet, I agreed. The second trouble was worse than Dawes. It came 10 days later, in the form of 2 men I did not know who arrived before dawn and sat their horses at the gate without calling out, which is not how a man with honest intentions approaches a property in the dark. I heard Porter first. That alarm sound he makes different from the dramatic nighttime commentary, lower and more serious. I was up and at the window before I was fully awake, and I saw them in the gray pre-light, 2 shapes against the fence, and one of them was holding something across his saddle that I could not immediately identify. Seiya was at my shoulder before I turned around. I do not know how she had heard it, she was simply there. 2, she said very quietly. I see them. The one on the right has a rifle. I know. She was already moving, not toward the door but toward the kitchen shelf where I kept the old Henry rifle my father had left me, which I had not used in 3 years, and was embarrassed to admit I was not entirely certain was loaded. She checked it. It was loaded. She handed it to me with an efficiency that told me she had handled firearms in situations more critical than this one. Stay back from the window, she said. This is my house, I said. And they're not here for the house, she said. I looked at her. They're here because of Dawes, she said, and because of me, so let me be useful. I am not going to let you go out there. I'm not going out there, she said. I'm going to the back door. If this goes wrong in front, I can come around the south side and they won't see me until it's too late. This isn't, I started. Mr. Collard, she said. Her voice was low and very level. The voice of someone who has made this kind of calculation before, who has sat in the dark and weighed out scenarios with a cold and practiced precision. I know you think you can handle this. Maybe you can, but I am not going to sit in the back room while you find out. I looked at her. She looked at me. All right, I said. She went to the back door, slipped out without a sound. I went to the front door and opened it and stepped onto the porch with the Henry in the crook of my arm. Not raised, not threatening, but present. Morning, I said. The one on the right said, Collard. You have me at a disadvantage, I said. I don't know your names. Don't need to, he said. We're just here to let you know some people in town are concerned about the situation you've got here. Figure you've had time to reconsider. I reconsider things daily, I said. What specifically are you hoping I'll reconsider? The woman, the second one said. He was younger, nervous in a way the first one wasn't. His horse was shifting under him. She works here, I said. She's paid her way since the day she arrived. I don't know what concern that is of anyone in town. It's a concern, the first one said, and his voice had a flatness that told me the conversation part of this visit was close to over. From the south corner of the house, very quietly, Porter appeared. He walked out of the dark into the pre-dawn gray with the calm of a creature who has assessed the situation and found it manageable, his large ears angled forward, his white muzzle catching the thin light. He stopped in the yard between me and the gate and stood there looking at the two men on horseback with an expression that I can only describe as unimpressed. Both horses immediately became more interested in Porter than in anything else. The younger man's horse shied sideways. The nervous energy shifted, fractured. Seiya came around the south corner of the house. She stood at the corner in shadow, and she did not speak or move, but her presence there, the simple fact of it, the fact that she had not been where they expected her to be and was instead flanking them on the left, was enough. The first man looked at her, looked at me, looked at Porter, who had not moved. The calculation was happening behind his eyes. I watched it. He pulled his horse back from the gate. Think on it, Collard, he said. I'll put it on my list, I said. They rode away. I waited until the sound of hooves was gone, and then I waited another full minute, and then I let out a breath that had been waiting since the moment I heard Porter's alarm. Seiya walked to the gate and looked out after them. I came and stood beside her. They'll come back, she said. Probably, I said. More of them. Probably. She was quiet. Porter ambled over and pressed his nose into her shoulder blade. She did not move him. I should go, she said, flat, factual, the same way she'd said I'm not staying long that first morning in the kitchen. Where, I said. She didn't answer that. Where would you go? I said, and I heard the edge in my own voice, not accusation, but something close to it, the sound of a man pushing against something he cannot quite articulate. You walked until your boots fell apart. You've got cracked ribs and you've been here 3 weeks and you just helped me hold off 2 men in the dark without flinching, and you're going to walk off into the mescals because Roy Dawes and 2 cowards with a horse are making noise. She turned and looked at me. Her face in the early light was very still, the tired still in her eyes not gone but different now. Something was moving underneath it. You think I'm afraid of walking, she said. No, I said. I think you're so used to walking that you do it when you don't have to. She was quiet. I think, I said more carefully, that you've been moving so long that stopping feels like a trap. She looked at Porter. He looked back at her. Your donkey, she said finally, needs a proper shelter before winter. That barn has a gap in the south wall large enough for the cold to come through. I blinked. I noticed it last week, she said. I didn't say anything. Why not? Because I was going to leave, she said, then very quietly, I kept not leaving. The sun was coming up now, thin and flat over the mescals. It caught the edge of her cheekbone and the line of her jaw and the still, careful posture of someone who has been 1,000 miles of hard country and come out the other side with something intact that she is not yet ready to name. The barn wall, I said. You'll need lumber from town. I know where to get lumber, she said. I've got a wagon, I said. I know you do. We stood there in the early morning. Porter made a small, satisfied sound. I opened my log that night, wrote for a long time. At the end of it, I wrote she stayed, not because I asked, not because she had nowhere else to go, she had always had somewhere else as long as she had feet. She stayed because she decided to. There is a difference, and I am going to spend some time understanding it. The barn wall was repaired by the 2nd week of the month. and Seiya had insisted on doing most of the work herself, which I had accepted after a brief argument that I lost comprehensively. She had an understanding of structural loads and material behavior that impressed me, and which she explained when I asked, came from watching her father build and repair things for 30 years. He taught me that a wall is only as strong as what it's set into, she said. The post and the ground. If you trust the ground, the wall holds. I wrote that down. I write a great deal more now than I did before October. The Dawes situation did not go away as I had known it wouldn't. He came back himself without the hired men on a gray Tuesday morning, and this time there was a different quality to him, not threatening but almost conciliatory, which in my experience is often more dangerous. He had a paper with him, some kind of county document. The specifics were deliberately obscure, the language of people who have learned how to use official forms as weapons. But the essential message was that there were questions about my property's compliance with certain territorial ordinances regarding employees and residents. I told him to leave it. He left it. Seiya read it that evening. She reads well, which I had observed but not commented on. She read it twice, set it on the table, and looked at the wood stove. It's nothing, I said. It's a first step, she said. They know what they're doing. What do you want to do about it? She looked at me. You're asking me. This affects you more than it affects me, I said. She was quiet for a long moment. Do you know a lawyer in Tucson? I thought men named Halpert. Wrote my land deed. He's not a friend, but he's professional. Write him a letter, she said. Tonight. Tonight, she said. Tell him what's happening, put it on paper, date it, keep a copy. I looked at her. You write things down before your mind decides what they mean, she said. This is the same thing. Write it before they write the version they want. I opened my log. I wrote the letter first, to Halpert, describing the visit and the document and the dates and the names. Then I copied it. Then I wrote my own account of the same events in the log, with the times and the light conditions and the specific words Dawes had used and the particular quality of that almost conciliatory smile. It took 2 hours. When I was done, Seiya was still at the table. She had been doing something with her hands, a piece of leather she had found, working it with a small knife, shaping it. I had not asked what it was. Done, I said. Good, she said. You've done this before, I said. Not an accusation, an observation. Kept working the leather. We kept records. What was taken when, by whom, dates, names. We knew nobody would ask for them. We kept them anyway. Her voice was level, but there was something underneath it, not anger exactly, but its compressed residue, the thing that remains after anger has been lived with so long it becomes simply part of the texture of how you move through the world. Someday someone will ask, she said. Or they won't ask, but the record will exist. Either way, it existed. That matters. I sat with that. My father said to write what you see before your mind decides what it means, I said. Your father understood something, she said. She set down the piece of leather and the knife, slid it across the table to me. It was a small medallion of leather, worked into a careful shape, an oval with a pattern pressed into it. I picked it up and turned it in the light from the lamp. It was a donkey, unmistakably a donkey, large ears, white muzzle suggestion in the way the leather was worked lighter at the center. Absolute dignified bearing. Porter, I said. He's earned it, she said. She stood and took her coffee cup to the basin. Keep it with your log, she said, so you remember what started all this. She went to her room. I sat at the table for a while with the leather medallion in my hand, and the lamp burning, and the wood stove ticking in the cold, and my log open in front of me. The letter to Halpert produced results I had not quite expected. He was, as I said, not a friend but a professional, and he turned out to have a significant personal distaste for what he recognized as bureaucratic harassment. He wrote back within 2 weeks with a very specific and detailed response to the county document, citing 4 relevant precedents, and noting that any further action would be vigorously contested. We did not hear from Dawes again for the rest of that winter. I am not naive enough to think that was the end of it. Seiya was not naive enough either. We both understood that the silence was temporary, that people like Dawes did not give up so much as recalculate, and that the recalculation was ongoing. But winter gave us a pause, and in the pause we had work to do. The 3 steers needed bringing through the cold. The east fence required reinforcement against the weather. The chicken population had quietly doubled through what I can only describe as chickens being chickens, which required an expansion of the coop that Seiya designed, and I built under her direction. Porter needed his hooves trimmed, which I was too ignorant to have recognized was overdue, and Seiya handled with the efficient confidence of someone who had been around working animals all her life. We ate together every night. We were not, during this period, easy with each other. I want to be precise about this because the imprecise version would be a lie. We were two people who were profoundly unlike in almost every particular: language, background, history. The fundamental way we understood the land we were both standing on, and we were learning to occupy the same space without the benefit of a shared vocabulary for most of what mattered. There were evenings when the silence between us was comfortable and evenings when it was not, when I could feel the distance between us like a physical thing, and I would sit with my log and she would sit with whatever she was working, and we would be in the same room but each of us entirely elsewhere. There was one evening in December that I remember with particular clarity. The cold was serious by then, real cold, and the wind was driving against the north side of the house with a force that made the walls expand and contract. I had been going back through old logs, a habit, when the weather keeps me in, reading entries from years before my wife passed, when this house had been a different kind of full. I had not meant to get lost in them. I had simply turned backward through the pages and found myself sitting with 3 years of grief I thought I had finished with. When I looked up, Seiya was watching me. "Old logs," I said. She nodded. "My wife," I said. "She's in here a lot." Seiya was quiet. "She would have," I started and then stopped, because I did not know how to finish that sentence without it becoming something maudlin. "She would have liked you. She would have had questions. She would have made you sit down and eat, and she would have asked you 100 things I haven't known how to ask. She would have fixed the chicken coop hinge herself," I said. Seiya looked at me. "She would have done it before I noticed it was broken," I said. "She was like that." There was a long silence. "My mother was like that," Seiya said. "She knew what needed doing before it needed doing. She used to say the world runs on women who fix things before they break." I looked at her. "She was right," I said. Something shifted in Seiya's face, not the almost smile. Something quieter, something that moved through her eyes and passed and left a kind of stillness behind it. "Yes," she said, "she was." We sat with the wind driving against the house, and the wood stove working hard, and the two of us in the same room with our different griefs. And it was not comfortable exactly, but it was honest. And there is a kind of company in honest grief that is harder to find than people pretend. I wrote that night, two people who have each lost a world they were used to, sitting in the wind. Not the same loss, not interchangeable, but maybe something adjacent, maybe something that recognizes itself. The question of what she was building came to a head in February. I had known, in the way you know things you are not ready to examine, that she was working on something beyond the daily tasks of the ranch. She was out before dawn sometimes, which I had initially attributed to her habit of standing in the dark and looking at the sky. But I had begun to notice other things, tracks in the mud along the east fence that were hers, going further east than the fence line ended. A small cache of supplies, wrapped food, a skin of water that she had assembled and kept near the back door. She was, I understood one morning with a cold clarity that surprised me by how much it hurt, preparing to go somewhere. I did not say anything. This was not my right. She had told me in the first week that she was not staying long, and she had stayed longer than she said, and whatever she had decided about the duration of that staying was hers to decide. But on a cold Tuesday in February, I came in from the barn and found her at the table with a folded piece of paper in her hands, reading it, and her face had a quality I had not seen before. Something opened, something cracked apart in a way that had not been there an hour ago. She looked up when she heard me. "Letter," she said. She held it out. I took it. It was not addressed to her. It was addressed to me, which is why it had arrived, which is how she'd gotten it. It had come through a circuitous route, through the lawyer Halpert, who had connections I had not known about, through a man in Tucson who worked with displaced families. It was from her husband. Not to her, he hadn't known how to reach her directly, had not known she was here. It was to me, Ben Collard, rancher, whose name had apparently traveled through enough channels to reach him wherever he was. It said very little. It gave a location, a town I recognized, 200 miles west. It said he was alive. It said he had been looking. I set it on the table. Seiya was looking at the wood stove. "That's him," I said, not a question. "Yes," she said. I sat down. We were both quiet for a while. 200 miles west, I said. "Yes. It's February," I said. "The passes will be bad for another 6 weeks." She nodded. "I have a wagon," I said, "and Porter pulls a wagon." She looked at me. "It'll take longer by road," I said. 8-10 days maybe, but it's safer than overland in this weather and Porter." "Mr. Collard," she said. I stopped. She was looking at me with an expression I did not know how to read exactly, something that had several things in it at once, gratitude, and a kind of exhaustion that was different from the exhaustion I'd first seen in her, softer somehow, and something else that I think might have been, in some form, affection. Not romantic, not simple, just the particular warmth that exists between two people who have spent a hard season learning to trust each other. "You don't have to," she started. "I know I don't have to," I said. "Porter wants to go on a trip." She looked at the table. "He's been very restless," I said. "The barn repairs are done, the fence is solid, the chickens have never been better organized. He needs a purpose." The corner of her mouth moved. 8 days, she said. "Maybe 9 if the weather turns," I said. "I've made that drive west, I know the road." She was quiet. "And you can keep the log," I said. She looked up. "While we travel," I said, "you can write down what you see before your mind decides what it means." She was still for a long moment. Then she reached across the table and picked up my open log and looked at the most recent entry which I had written 2 days ago. She read it, set it down. "You're not a poet," she said. "I know," I said. "But you write like someone who is paying attention," she said. "I try to," I said. She stood up, pulled on her coat. "I'll pack the supplies I have," she said. "The food by the back door. We should leave by Thursday if we're leaving." "Thursday," I said. She moved toward the door and then stopped. "Ben," she said. It was the first time she had used my name without the mister. "The fence on the north line," she said. "Post near the old juniper. It's leaning. You'll need to reset it before spring." "I'll see to it," I said. "And the chickens," she started. "Seiya," I said. She stopped. "I can manage the chickens," I said. "I managed them before." She looked at me. The almost smile was there, fuller than I had ever seen it. Not quite a smile still, but closer. The ghost had come back and was considering whether to stay. "You managed them very poorly before," she said. "That's fair," I said. She went out to pack. We left on a Thursday, as we said we would. Porter pulled the wagon with the affronted dignity of a creature who is willing to do this, but wants it on record that he considers himself above it. Seiya sat on the wagon bench beside me and had my second log open on her knees. I had given it to her at the last minute, mostly full journal that she could finish out. She wrote in it as we moved, and I did not read over her shoulder, and she did not tell me what she wrote. The mescals were cold and white-edged on the horizon. The road was frozen mud that cracked under the wheels and would be soft mud in 6 hours when the sun was properly up, and I would have to stop and wait. There were things I had not said and would not say, and things I had written in my log that she would eventually read when I was not there to explain them, and things she had written in the log that I would eventually read when she was not there to take them back. Porter's ears rotated constantly, reading the world. After about a mile, she said, "Write what you see." I had my pencil. I wrote in my current log, the one I was keeping, on my knee. "Road west, cold, Porter pulling. She's writing. The mescals behind us look small from here, or maybe they just look less than they did." I looked up. She was writing. I did not look at what she was writing. That was hers. I wrote she stayed until she could go. That's the right order. That's the only order that would have worked for her. I think I understand it now better than I did in October. The road bent west. I wrote one more line, and then I put the pencil away and held the reins and watched Porter's ears, and let the morning come in around us without trying to put it into words for a while.